Testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do that.
All right, sir, if you'll come on around and have a seat in the witness stand, make yourself comfortable, and you may adjust that microphone.
Counsel your witness.
Please state your name.
Dwayne Barton.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm employed with the Department of Juvenile Justice
Sorry. And how long have you been employed with the Department of Juvenile Justice?
since December 2002.
All right. And so that's 20 years roughly with the Department of Juvenile Justice?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. How far did you go with your education?
Bachelor's degree.
Okay. And what job titles have you held over the years with the Department of Juvenile Justice?
Juvenile probation officer, supervised release tracker, alternative to secure detention officer.
All right. Now, turning specifically to this case, how did you become involved with Aiden Fucci?
Circuit 7, St. Johns County, requested that Duval County provide courtesy supervision / wellness checks on Aiden.
All right. And in terms of your wellness checks, what did that mean? What exactly were you doing?
Basically just checking to see if he was being abused, if he had any bruises, marks. He was being involved in fights with staff or with his peers.
All right. So how often would you see Aiden?
Once a month or every other month.
And how did he appear to you the first time you saw him?
The first initial visit, he appeared very anxious. He paced back and forth in the interview room, and he indicated he was hearing voices.
You said he was pacing back and forth. Did he make any eye contact with you?
Very little.
All right. And did you see any marks on his arms?
He did have some what appeared to be old marks. I'm not sure how he got those, but they didn't appear to be deep marks. It was just like scratches.
All right. And did he indicate any issues? Well, you said hearing voices. Did he indicate anything else?
No, not that
All right.
I recall.
And you continue to see him each month, every other month, roughly?
Yes, sir.
All right. And the purpose of that, when you say wellness check, what exactly are you checking on?
Again, just checking to see if he was, being involved in fights, if he had any bruises, just make sure he wasn't being abused.
Okay. Did his demeanor with you change over time?
It appeared that he got, a little more comfortable with me because I was seeing him more frequent.
Did he start to make eye contact with you?
Yes,
So over time, the two of you are actually having conversations without him pacing?
yes.
Right. How many visits in total do you think you've made with Aiden over the years?
I believe it was like 9.
And at times, were you encouraging Aiden to work with the mental health staff?
I was.
All right. Did you have? Go ahead.
Almost each time I would tell him to, if he was having any issues, to reach out to the mental health staff at the jail.
But you specifically weren't having any conversations with them?
No.
All right. So you're encouraging to meet with mental health staff?
Yes.
Okay. Did he follow your advice?
I'm not certain. I do know that he did indicate that he had previously put in a sick call request for some medication for acne.
Okay. And then in terms of the voices, is that something that continued on for a period of time? Meaning his reporting it to you?
It was reported each time.
He also indicated to you that he was taking certain medications?
Yes, initially he said he was taking lithium, but it also changed. He was taking Remron and Zoloft, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. Now, you've indicated that you've worked with DJJ for about 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. And over your 20 years, well, let me ask you, how many juveniles have you supervised on average per year?
I couldn't answer that.
All right. So over the 20 years, you wouldn't have an answer of how many juveniles you've worked with?
No.
Fair to say almost countless?
Countless, yes.
All right. Then, and in terms of you actually going into the jails and having wellness visits, Aiden's not the first kid you've done this with.
To this extent, yes.
Go ahead.
I have gone in and checked on other kids, but it wasn't not that often.
All right. And then in terms of children reporting, whether in custody or out, Aiden's not the first child that you've worked with that's reported having some issues in terms of hearing voices.
I don't recall any other kids other than Aiden
All right.
reporting. If they did report it, we will make referrals to different providers. But that's
Go ahead.
that's pretty much the extent of it.
But what I'm getting to is that over the years, and it's been 20 years, you've had to work with children that are having some mental health issues, meaning you're not counseling, but you're working with others that are working with the children on those issues.
Yes.
All right. In terms of you sitting with Aiden one-on-one, so he's less anxious, there's more eye contact. So after a period of time, the two of you are able to work or at least speak to each other? Or is there an improvement in the communications between the two of you?
Yes.
Okay. With your interactions with him, were there any behavioral issues?
No, never.
When he's reporting to you the hearing voices, you don't follow up and ask specifically what he's hearing. Is that fair to say?
No, ma'am.
That's not what you're there for.
No.
Okay. You're aware that, or is it fair to say part of the reason you're doing the wellness check so long is because Aiden was in solitary for a period of time?
I'm not sure if it was solitary. I think they
Confinement, I'm sorry. The phrase is
isolation.
confinement.
Isolation due to his age.
All right. And have you seen, over your 20 years, children sitting in confinement for that long a period of time?
I haven't.
So that-
I haven't had any kids that has been in long as Aiden has.
in confinement.
That I'm aware of, no.
Okay. One moment. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
Good morning, Mr. Barton.
Good morning.
So these wellness checks that you were doing with Mr. Fucci, I believe you stated you were doing them, you would make visits to the jail and meet with several kids in the same day, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he wasn't the only juvenile that you were checking on that was charged as an adult in that jail, right?
No.
Okay. And the point of those checks, it sounds like you kind of summarized it. You were looking for abuse, any signs of injury, general wellness checks, like how they're doing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you ever see with him, or were there any complaints about abuse by another inmate, let's say?
No, he did indicate that he was involved in a physical altercation on one occasion.
Okay, so he told you about a fight he had one time, but outside that fight, any abuse by staff or other inmates? You
Not
never
that I'm
complained of
aware
that? Okay. And when you met with these kids, you described, it wasn't like a checklist that you had verbatim, but there were all, you checked on the same things every time and kind of asked the same questions every time. Is that fair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you asked that of all the kids you visit, not just Mr. Fucci?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And one of the things you talk about or ask is about, are you seeing things or hearing voices, right?
Not necessarily. I would ask, are you currently taking any medications? And, they'll report. I'm taking lithium for, hearing voices or depression or bipolar, things
Okay.
of that nature.
But that's being checked on, a general mental health questions being
Yes.
asked every time. So he's answering you in response to that.
Yes, ma'am.
And as you stated, you have a lot of experience with DJJ, but you're not a psychologist, right?
I'm not.
Okay, so you don't get into the details. You're there basically to document his well-being and then advise him of resources that may be available for him while he's in the jail?
Yes.
Okay. And that very first visit you had with him where he was anxious, sort of pacing, was that close in time to his arrest and being moved to that jail?
I believe it was June of 2021.
Okay.
So I'm not really certain if it within that month or, a couple days.
Right, that was the first time. And then his interaction with you got better. He was calmer with you after that, right?
Yes.
Okay. He denied, one of the things you ask about is if they have any suicidal thoughts, and he denied that when you met with him over the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you never saw any proof or evidence that he was trying to harm himself in any way?
No, ma'am.
You would have reported that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You testified in your deposition that when you met with the juveniles, it's not like you went to their cell. You were put in a room and they were brought to you. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. And you weren't sure the breakdown of how many days he spent in general population versus administrative confinement versus true isolation, right? You don't know those numbers.
I don't.
Okay. So you wouldn't be viewing him in the setting. He would be brought to you.
He will be brought to me.
Okay. So that information is best to come from the jail.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you also had testified when asked about his maturity level that you felt he was pretty mature for his age.
I did.
Okay. And you've been doing this and working with juveniles for 20 years, right?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
All right. No further questions.
Thank you very much, sir. You're free to go.
Thank you.
May I see the attorneys at sidebar?